Welcome to Anything You Want, where we stitch together cultural context, careful sourcing, and close reporting to bring our audience narratives that go beyond the headline. If you value the depth of our coverage, please subscribe, press the join button to support our investigative features, and like and comment to tell us which angle you would like explored further. In the paragraphs that follow, we reconstruct Kerem Bürsin's recent admissions about past relationships, situate those words within the broader circuitry of Turkish celebrity culture, and examine how a single candid sentence can ripple across careers, fandoms, and the ethics of coverage. In a candid and unexpectedly tender turn during a recent interview, Kerem Bürsin acknowledged that although he has entered into several relationships since the chapter of his life shared with Hande Erçel, none of those subsequent attachments reached the particular emotional summit that characterized his prior union. This phrasing, offered without theatrical flourish and with a clear note of retrospection, suggested not a strategic attempt to capture headlines but an honest appraisal of a formative emotional reality, an admission that immediately reframed both his personal narrative and how audiences might interpret his future choices. To apprehend the gravity of Kerem's words, it is important to remember how intensely the Bürsin-Erçel interval was lived in public. Their partnership functioned for a time as more than a private relationship and evolved into a cultural event in which every red carpet photograph, every appearance together, and every shared social media moment accrued symbolic meaning for an audience that often reads its own desires into celebrity histories. That sustained visibility converted their intimacy into a kind of public archive, so when Kerem spoke in retrospective terms, he was, in effect, touching on a chapter that had helped define a generation's appetite for televised romance and social media theaters of feeling. Beyond social media fervor, the admission created quieter reverberations in industry circles. Brand managers, casting directors, and producers took stock of the possible implications because in the entertainment business, perception often affects opportunity. A romantic revelation can elevate curiosity and streaming metrics, yet it can also complicate brand associations and contractual negotiations if sponsors worry about unpredictability. For actors navigating global streaming platforms and transnational publicity, the contours of a personal narrative can influence marketing strategies, timing for new projects, and the architecture of public statements designed to safeguard long-term career trajectories. Friends and close associates of Kerem described him in interviews, some off the record, some on, as reflective and sincere, insisting that his words were not the work of a publicity strategist but rather the speech of someone attempting to account for how an intense relationship shaped his emotional expectations. These confidants urged that the public consider the distinction between mourning a formative love and actively seeking its resumption, yet the reality of celebrity is that private reflection transposes into public material, and nuance is often lost when editorial incentives favor spectacle over sober context. Psychologists and cultural commentators who weighed in suggested a measured interpretation. Intense relationships can leave durable imprints on one's internal world, shaping expectations and sometimes making subsequent attachments feel comparatively diminished in both intensity and meaning. That said, professionals cautioned against reading permanence or incapacity into a single statement, noting that human beings are capable of growth and that the endurance of memory need not foreclose future intimacy of equal or different kinds. In other words, the presence of a lingering memory is a human fact but does not in itself prescribe future outcomes. As the discourse expanded, ethical considerations came to the fore. Several columnists urged restraint and a focus on verified context, proposing that reporting should avoid sensational framings that convert personal reminiscence into public commands. Others observed that the appetite for narrative is intrinsic to entertainment journalism. Readers want arcs and emotional resolution, and outlets that can supply satisfying narratives often find themselves rewarded by traffic and engagement. This tension between ethical restraint and commercial incentives is, of course, not new, but the Kerem episode makes the stakes especially visible because it involves actors whose collaborative histories intersect with audience nostalgia. At Anything You Want, we endeavor to move beyond aggregation and to facilitate constructive dialogue. Therefore, we invite our readers and viewers to participate in a structured conversation. Would you like us to produce a chronological dossier of the pair's public encounters to assess whether there are signs of rapprochement? Or would you prefer a psychological feature that explores why certain relationships feel irreplaceable? Or should we pursue a media ethics inquiry into how the press handles private recollections when they go public? Click Join to vote in our subscriber poll and receive the exclusive dossier and deeper analysis. And while you are there, do not forget to subscribe and like to help us fund this extended reporting. There are immediate, pragmatic implications to consider. For Kerem, renewed public interest in his romantic past could create opportunities for heightened visibility and streaming interest, but may also generate intrusive scrutiny that affects his professional and private choices. For Hand, the resurfacing of attention, even indirectly prompted by someone else's statement, could be unwelcome and necessitate a managerial response to protect personal boundaries. Agents and publicists will likely counsel measured communication and could coordinate statements intended to divert attention back toward craft and upcoming projects. Industry commentators also speculated on potential career ramifications. Would casting directors regard expressive candor as an asset, enhancing perceived authenticity and thus making an actor more appealing for certain roles? Or would commercial partners evaluate the unpredictability of personal disclosures as a possible risk? The answers will vary by context, but the key observation remains that private statements by high-profile figures can have public and professional ripple effects far beyond the moment of utterance. As reporting continues, we will maintain standards of verification and proportionality. We will verify any new claims, respect boundaries when requested, and avoid unsubstantiated rumor. That said, the episode raises a number of important questions for audiences and journalists alike. How should we treat the recollections of public figures? Do we have a right to demand reconciliation or privacy? And what responsibilities do media organizations bear when personal testimony drives public curiosity? We want to hear from you. Do you read Kerem Bürsin's remark as a poetic tribute to a defining chapter in his life, as an indication of unresolved attachment, or simply as a reflective observation that has been broadened by public appetite for story? Share your view in the comments, and vote in our subscriber poll by clicking the Join button so your preference determines our next deep dive piece. Your engagement helps shape whether we pursue a chronological reconstruction, a psychological analysis, or a media ethics study. In closing, this episode serves as a reminder that modern fame is not merely an accumulation of roles and performances but also a repository of effective histories that can surface in ways both tender and complicated. How the public remembers and responds to such memories can have real implications for the people involved. We will continue to follow verified developments and to report them with the nuance they deserve. Until then, please subscribe to Anything You Want, like and comment below, and join our community to help decide which angle you want us to pursue next, because behind every headline there are people, and our job is to tell their stories with care and context.